Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Today is December 15th, and we're going to be treated with a Boca Shrimp by Alan Kuhre from Florida. And I'll be doing a couple of tips and tricks on rubber legs. But we're the BTs from Boise, Idaho. And let me put a side by side here with Alan so we can do an introduction. And Alan Kuhre is a retired from the U.S. Army Dental Corps. So, how many years did you spend in, Alan?
20.
20. Oh, okay. Anyway, he lives year round in Naples, Florida, kayaks the coastal waters and estuaries of Southwest Florida, targeting snook, redfish, and juvenile tarpon. From November to April, kayaking is probably the most efficient method of sight fishing for these targeted species, especially during the lower tidal stages. Despite being the height of the tourist season, few skiffs dare to navigate the shallow, muddy bottoms with scattered oyster mounds. As a result, most fish are relatively relaxed and undisturbed. Since practically all fish will eat a shrimp, tonight's fly pattern, called the Boca Shrimp, is an imitative pattern that often gets the job done in Southwest Florida. We're waiting with bated breath, Alan. Go for it.
Okay, thank you, Al. I call it the Boca Shrimp. It pretty try to imitate a shrimp as best as possible. And as I think I may have mentioned to Al a while back, but at least 10 years ago, I was down in Mexico, south of Cancun. I had 5 days there with guided fishing just north of Ascension Bay over on the East Coast, south of Tulum. And that area is known for good opportunities to get a grand slam. So the tarpon, regular bait fish patterns or gurglers work pretty well. But I found this shrimp pattern, which I had used a little bit in the Bahamas and down in the Florida Keys when targeting bonefish, worked really quite well. So we were having a tough time finding something to work on the permit. And everyone throws crabs, as most of you know, at permit, and occasionally they'll eat a shrimp. But a while back, I don't think they saw many shrimp flies. So I pulled this out, and what a game changer that was. Not to pat myself on the back too much, but it was 2 days, Thursday and Friday. The last 2 days had a grand slam, our super grand slam, I guess, because we had this snook, tarpon, bonefish, and permit all in one day. And it's just a great time. Had a lot of success with this shrimp pattern. And I've taken it, used it for different fisheries, for different habitats. And I tweak things a bit, which I'll discuss as we add the materials to the hook. But you have to change it a little bit. I know Al a little while back was talking about the dirty rat and how, it was a believer as far as the fly can make a huge difference. And I agree wholeheartedly over here in Florida. Certain patterns work really well, and you take them elsewhere and they're no good. They just don't get the job done. So anyway, Al, do you want to throw up that materials list, and we'll quickly go over it. For the most part, number 2 hook works really good. If you're in targeting juvenile tarpon, I'll use a B10S by Gamakatsu in a number 2. Otherwise, I really like the Tiemco 811S and the Umpqua's U401. They're kind of a matte silvery color. They're not flashy, and they got a real, they're fairly stout hooks for salt water, but a size 2 is a perfect size for most any bonefish or permit you're going to come across. Thread 210 denier flat wax nylon. You can use a light tan if you're targeting the bonefish where the bottom's a lot lighter. or if you're in darker water, tannic water like I have around my home area, I'll go with a dark brown. The eyes, lead eyes or small brass hourglass works real well for where you want to get that shrimp kind of jigging action. If you're going to be targeting tailing fish, you want to go real light with bead chain. Gold bead chain works great. And I really don't use this fly for, you can put mono, like black mono eyes, if it's super skinny for the bones, and make sure you have a weed guard. Craft fur I use for the tail and add some accents like crystal flash. Tonight I'm going to add root beer to a sand colored craft fur. And we're going to be tying this more gearing towards the Bahamas or the Keys, targeting primarily bonefish. So the egg sac, you could use orange dubbing or a little dab of craft fur. Tie that in. The legs, again, you want a light colored leg, kind of an amber for the bonefish. If you're targeting redfish, I'll go with a brown orange. A little more deeper brown color works really well. And then the body, there's a lot of variation in colors there. Again, a darker color, as well as whether you want to have like the tarantula brush that EP makes, has a whole bunch of little rubbery, like silly legs incorporated into it. And I kind of like that. You can get a sand, very light tan colored brush with pink, or you can get it with more of a very light tan leg that works really well. And we'll go ahead and use that tonight in the tan. And weed guard, I pretty much always put a weed guard on. Just easier to put a single stalk, but a double stalk works good if I know I'm going to be in turtle grass or a lot of structure. I'll want two posts to kind of protect that hook from falling on any debris in the water. But this is the pattern that we're going to be working on. It'll be just a tad different than this one. That's the Boca Shrimp. Like I said, I'm going to start out with the Tiemco, or the Umpqua, I'm sorry, the 401 in a size 2. And my advice is, I don't know, over the years, they get a little sloppy on the Dynaking. I don't know, but I like adding a little bit of cardboard there. That really takes in any gap and also protects the finish of the hook. I've had some corrosion issues, and this just becomes a routine for me now. Just move it just a skosh. I'm using the 210 wax nylon. This is a tan color. And we'll go ahead and do a real, thread base from the eye of the hook to the bend and back, and then put in this is the eyeball, black, red, really a nice looking eye. I'm gonna thicken up the base for it here. A couple more back and forth. Yeah, it's better. And it's not just the wraps. I am putting a fair amount of tension, and that's why I use 210 denier. Get a little bit of stretch, and it's amazing how just the stretch of the thread really holds everything in place. So that's kind of where we're at. I've got some of this craft fur. This is how it looks in the package, hairline. That's the sand. Cut some off just to save a little time. I've got a bunch here. We're going to be mainly using this end portion. The other side, it's a lot of like under fur, a lot of short fibers. So I think they call this like a lice brush, but we're just going to get a lot of the short stuff out of here. And you just secure this, light wraps or light thread wraps around the material at first, get it right behind the eyes, and then you can just walk it right up. Keep that thread right next to the previous wrap. Then we'll go back. I'd like to keep the material above the hook. I don't want it wrapping around the hook. I'll go back right to the bend. I think I'm there now. I'll come forward a little bit. Okay, yeah. That's kind of what we're looking for now. A lot of shrimp have these bars or markings in the abdomen or tail section. So we get out the Sharpies. I like to make like 4 bands. Got a light brown here, little gap between each one. And these markers are pretty, the Sharpies really hold up over time. I get a lot of use out of them before I have to kind of freshen up these markings. But it's nice to do it now, so before you have all the silly legs and crystal flash in the way. I use a darker marker in brown just to highlight which will be the dorsal surface. This is going to ride hook point up. You get something like that. Now, the next thing we're going to add in are these shrimp usually have a dark spot. And people that bait fish, they say hook it, in the thorax, around the head and don't hit the dark spot. But it's pretty prominent on most shrimp. So I use black mono eyes to mimic that. And I just hairline make some nice ones here. These actually are the stalk between each eye. The round eyeball is kind of rectangular, which helps tying it in. You don't have round on round, kind of like these. We're going to put it just under the barb or point of the hook, figure 8. What I like about going with these eyes, once you get them where you want them, is that you can push them up a bit so that the eyes are above the hook shank. It seems to help, makes things a little more prominent. And then you do these wraps under the eyes, but above the shank. Then I'm going to come back a little bit. Okay, so I think you can see that. Then next, good time to add a little bit of crystal flash. This is root beer. I just add one strand, have one going on each side to resemble antenna. Just kind of use the eyes as an anchoring point. There we go. My threads splitting a little bit. So you got those guys in. And then silly legs are nice, not required, of course. But I'm going to go ahead and got these amber with some black fleck. I'm going to take 2 of them, be 2 riding along each side. There we go. Let's just turn this over. Actually, I want it up like this. Again, similar to like I did with the I'm just gently wrapping. I don't want these to roll. Then once I got them, they're not going anywhere. Okay. And then I like to put like an egg sac, like a gravid crab or something. I've used. This is it's kind of like some type of material there, resembling craft fur, but it's not. But tonight I think this works out real well. I'm gonna do some ice dub by hairline, so I'll make a dubbing loop, a little wax, and add a couple pinches of that. And it's gonna go right between the bend of the hook, fill up that space in between those black mono eyes that were just put in. So we'll get a loop going. Let's take a little bunch. It's fairly long, I'm gonna split it in half. Start from the back. I want to make sure I don't pull these legs or that crystal flash out of position. Kind of hold that and then just gently wrap this. You'll see it kind of fills that area in pretty nice. And then we'll secure that off with a thread. We got our tarantula brush. This is the 1 inch. And that code means anything to you, but I just see that it's tan, right? And here it is, and you can see all the legs in it. And it's a nice match as far as color for this sand craft fur and all. I've gone ahead and trimmed the end there. There's a wire. I bend it over, and it seems to reduce the number of times that when I wrap that the end of the wire will cut the thread in here. So just gonna turn her over, get the wire on top. Try not to catch too many fibers. And if you find yourself catching a few, it's like a different brush I used. It had a tendency to really lock, get in the way of other fibers. This one handles much better. So I'm right behind the eyes. I like to go under and then over in between the eyes. And then one in front. Then we're ready to tie off. And since I'm gonna be targeting bonefish, I like this color as is for reds in particular. But since I'm saying this is going to go down to the Keys or to the Bahamas, basically targeting bonefish. Those of you who have fished bones, I know some people, all they throw is a tan and white clouser with a pink nose. And man, they do so well just on that one fly. So we're going to add a pink head and use that to tie in the weed guard. I want this to jig a bit. So this is going to be trimmed kind of short on the dorsal there. Then with the underside, kind of ramp up towards the point of the hook. Pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and add Got a little bit of pink thread. We'll go ahead and put a weed guard on. Okay, weed guard. I like to use Mason. I've got some Rio Mason to go with 20 because that's what I have handy. But it's good for a single stalk. If I were going to do a double tonight, I would probably use the 16 pound. It's a little more flex in it, obviously. But just take that. I like to crimp the tag end, and when I'm applying, maybe a couple millimeters, it's flattened. I like to have the end of this go right over where the eye of the hook is. And if you do that, it keeps the thread from coming off the weed guard as you wrap forward. You see this bend here, I kind of like to have more of a straighter. So I just take the handle of the whip finisher and just come forward. And it'll kind of create a straighter. Right at the tip, which is nice. And I use this pliers, and again, I'm going to crimp. Pull forward, squeeze, a little rotation, and you get a nice rest right up at. Okay. Then last bit, I like to use Loon's UV Clear, and it's the thick, to add a little shine and protect the thread wrap there. And all that's really left to do is to look at the length of the silly legs, trim those how you like them. You can trim all four at the same length. I'll do that usually, and then the outboard set, I usually shorten them a little bit, but shorten these by about a ½ inch. I think it shows nicely the way it's supposed to ride. So that's pretty much the Boca Shrimp. Yeah.
We have a question from Paul in Australia. He would like to see what the view is like from the over-the-shoulder camera if you've got it connected.
There we go.
And what I did was I have a little piece of I put in front here. And if you can see more of what I'm doing with my hands with that over-the-shoulder camera. It's not quite as detailed, but if I were, maybe when I was doing that dubbing, it might have been good to switch over. So that's over the shoulder there.
Time for the weekly tip, and you're going to be stuck with me. I'll be talking a little bit about rubber legs, maybe in a slightly different context from what Alan was sharing with us and the rubber legs that he used. But anyway, let's take a quick look here at the materials area, Gretch, while I get some glasses. And I've got a package of rubber leg material here that I've had for some time. And what I wanted to talk to you about, I'll move over to the vice camera and you can get a better look at, well, it comes in strips. They're kind of stuck together. Of course, some of it comes apart. And you have all kinds of different configurations that you get to deal with. Some of it stuck together, some of it in single strands. And that's what we're going to show you tonight. Now, first off, that's not a fly in the vise. That's just a hunk of hair giving me something to tie a rubber leg on so that you could kind of get an idea of some of the tricks that we use with rubber legs. Yes, but whoever, I do not want to receive any emails in the morning trying to describe what I fish it for. If I do receive that email, I know that I will have caught the fish I was after. But anyway, this is common. I mean, this is all together, a little bit of separation here, and it's not uncommon for your rubber leg material to be like that. We have kinks and so forth. We're going to deal with kinks and knots at another time. We've already dealt with them earlier this year, so there's no reason to go into it. But what we're going to be dealing with is how you slip them on the hook. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with something that we learned from our friend in Australia last week, as a matter of fact, Paul. And I really like the way he put his strand of rubber leg on. So we're just going to kind of use the same process that he did. And we're going to just bring it up and over. Get it where we want it for length. Bring the other end around. And we're going to bring it up and over. And let's see, are those legs about right? Well, let's make this offside leg just a little bit longer. Oh, that looks pretty good. Let's anchor that guy down. Take my scissors. There you've got a perfect Madam X. Thank you to Paul. So I'm going to just take that off now and I'll set that aside.
It's a Begley. I learned it from Gary.
You learned it from Gary? Okay, Gary, I'm sorry. I must not have seen that program. My apologies for giving, we'll call it a Paul Gary or a Gary Paul. Back over at our materials area, I want to take a look at just a couple of strands of that have been broken apart. They're just, you find them loose in your package and they're not quite the same length. We'll fix all that here in just a little bit. Now I've got to tell you a bit of a story because anytime you think that you've just about figured out everything there is to figure out about fly tying, you're going to find that you didn't know it. Well, back in the day when right after Gretchen and I first got married, we started doing programs for clubs around the area as we build up our name as presenters and tires at shows and stuff like that. And we got invited to come down to Logan, Utah to tie flies. And I had the good fortune to sit right next to a young fellow that probably didn't say 3 words the whole day, but he was one of the best tires that I've ever seen. And he was a tire for one of the shops in the area, about 14 years old, and he was just earning money to go to school. And I thought, Jesus, that's great. And then I saw this, and I got to tell you, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people, myself included, take a rubber leg and put it on this side, and then put another rubber leg on the other side of the fly, and end up with, well, you have to stretch it here, you got to cut it there. And if that sounds familiar, here's what this young fellow showed me, and he didn't even know he was showing me. He just took the 2 of them and put them on like this. Hold them up and over. There they are. Take the top one, move it over to the other side, and you're done with the rubber leg. Put them on together. Well, I couldn't leave that alone, and in fact, over the years, we've probably gone to using the technique I'm going to share with you now the most. And that's when you're setting down to put together an order of X number of dozen flies, you're going to have all the legs cut the same. You just take the strips like they come just like this. And you tie it in place with just a loose turn. And now you just take your bodkin and you identify the point where you got 2 left behind. And we'll do the same thing in behind here. And I'll just set that down. Then I will remove the ones I don't want. And break apart the ones that I do. By the way, I want to explain something to you. The rubber legs that I have here are pretty old. And as they get older, when you do the trick that I'm going to show you now, which ain't going to work, when you do this and you give it a hard pull, stretch it and let it snap back. If it's a new rubber legs, it will break apart. If they're kind of old and they're losing some of their spong, is what I call it, then they won't. And so this one didn't break apart, so I have to use the tip of my scissors to break it apart. But if it's a new rubber legged, then no problem. It just breaks apart. And you just move this over to the other side, just like we did on the others. You've got them divided evenly, front and back, Matamex style. Finish in whatever way you want. Sharing on BTs is one of the things that I look forward to the most. And in fact, I picked up so many tips from these sharing episodes. And tonight, Chuck, what do you have here?
Okay, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but this is a damsel fly that's tied with the pine squirrel strip. I don't know if you can tell. What you do is you strip the hair off the back and use that as a dubbing around the eyes. But the reason I bring this up is the eyes. What I do is that's a piece of mono that's UV active, and I put little beads on each side and then hold them in with the heated mono. But here's the thing that's really cool.
Yep.
It really makes a difference, though, and so it's very powerful. The other thing I wanted to share is Ferguson and I were at the Atlantic Guild meeting where he imported an Italian tire that ties in hand, but he also owns Coptic Tool Company. And I have to tell you about this bobbin. This bobbin is made so that when you're winding flat wound thread, this pivots on its own. So when you wind, the thread never twists on you, ever.
Okay, one of the things that has always bothered me, and I kind of solved it a long time ago, but on thread spools that don't have a thread holder like some of them do, particularly like UTC has nice thread holders, but Uni does not. And what I do is take some nail polish and see if you can see this. I put a couple of dots of nail polish.
Yep, I can see that.
Right next to that slit that you can never find the damn slit.
Good idea.
That lets me know where to put my thread. And it works on just whatever color you need. The other thing I have is I really liked Sherry's third hand last week, and came up with a quick way to do the same thing for me anyway. This is a couple of pieces of that silicone tubing that I showed you guys a few weeks ago. Alligator clip. Slide the tubing onto the clip. Epoxy a nail in the back of the clip. Take your fly tying vise that has a bobbin holder on it. Slide out the bobbin holder. Slide in the alligator clip. And you've got...
Oh, man, do I like that. Wow.
Wow.
Oh, that ought to be illegal. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this Friday. Next Friday, Gretchen and I will be the featured fly tyers. We'll look forward to seeing you then. Until then, good night.